Whenever I visited, my cousins took me to the trout stream to fish. Just before the stream was an abandoned locomotive. Why it was there, in the middle of nowhere, no one could answer. No one knew of a town or mine that had been nearby. We'd followed the train tracks before, overgrown by bushes and encased in decades of blown dirt. Portions of the track were missing, and the track disappeared altogether after crossing the stream. The locomotive was rusted to pieces, and had been there for so long that a tree grew up through the cab. It was a solid 7-mile hike across country to the stream from my cousin's farm. We'd always rested a bit when we got to the locomotive, leaning our backs against the big wheels, enjoying the shade cast by the canopy of the tree. As children we'd always patted the locomotive and said, "Hi," climbing inside to pretend to be engineers. The first time I'd been there we'd rang the bell, and the housing had broken, the bell clattering to the ground. If it hadn't been so heavy, we'd have carried it home with us. As it was, it lay there in the weeds, year after year, and we made our own bell sounds and steam whooshing noises until we grew out of that stage. When we got there today, something was out of place. We were absolutely exhausted, so it took us a minute to place what was strange. Alex started walking around the locomotive, calling out, "Look, someone has been shining up the old girl." Sure enough, someone had replaced rusted parts and done a bang-up paint job on the locomotive. It was a far cry from the rusted derelict that we spent so much time camping near. If it weren't for the broken windshield where the tree grew through it, and all the vines and weeds crowded around it, it might have merely been a broken engine sitting on a sideline waiting for a mechanic. Weird. Alex hopped up to look in the cab. "Nothing done in here. Looks like the raccoons are still in charge." Joey started sorting out the tent. "Let's get this set up. I'm already whacked and I still want to fish. No way I'm staggering back up this bank in a few hours and setting everything up." We started helping with the tent, forgetting about the train. We always pitched the tent on the flat ground a few yards in front of the train in a patch where the train tracks were missing. The rest of the ground in the area either sloped down to the stream or was covered in bushes. When we were done with the campsite, we grabbed our fishing gear and headed down to the bridge. The sky was cloudy, which made the water look black and inky. Alex cast first while I worked on my lure. Before I even got my set in the water, Alex was yelling triumphantly, pulling in a nice eating-size rainbow trout. That got us all excited and competitive. It didn't seem like it took long and we had enough trout to eat, but the sky said it was going on to dusk, and we realized that we hadn't even started a fire. Shit, Alex grabbed the fish and our gear. Joey and I started scavenging for dry twigs and branches. It was completely blackout by the time we had enough wood to cook the fish. Joey had managed to get a tiny flame crackling in the fire ring. "I'm starving and I'm dead," Alex moaned. He was lying flat on the ground, spread-eagled, an open bag of chips by his hand. "You fall asleep and I'm eating your fish," I said. Alex grinned without opening his eyes and threw a chip in my general direction. "If he doesn't, I will," Joey said. "I ain't staying awake with this fire while you guys snooze." A chip was thrown in his direction as well. Then Alex opened his eyes and sat up. "Fine." He stood up and stretched, then started wandering around. After a few minutes he yelled from the darkness, "You guys got to see this. Am I going crazy?" "Can't go where you already are," I said, getting up. We followed his voice and found him at the train engine, his head inside the cab. We scrambled up next to him and followed the beam of his flashlight around the interior. No rust, no dust, no raccoons. The cracked broken seat had been replaced with an immaculate one. The dials and levers shined in the light. The floorboard was fixed, except where the tree jutted through. The windshield was still broken and dirty, the tree still very much in residence. "It didn't look a thing like this when we got here," Alex said. "Someone was here while we were fishing." His eyes were round like he'd seen a ghost. I laughed at him. "Good one," I said. "You two are nuts." I jumped down. "What the hell, man?" Alex yelled after me. "This is weird." Weird that you two had the strength to carry paint and lumber 7 miles through sticker bushes, I said. Trying to spook the city, cousin? Remember the last time I was here and you tried to convince me that you could milk a chicken? You saw the inside of the train when we got here, Alex yelled. No, I didn't. I saw the painted outside and you told me that the inside wasn't changed. I never looked for myself, I laughed and went back to the fire. Joey followed me and Alex finally trailed behind us, still looking spooked. Joey said he certainly hadn't helped Alex with any renovations. I shrugged and said that it was all Alex then. Alex said he was innocent. We argued while the fish cooked, then calmed down while we ate them. Nothing, and I repeat, nothing, tastes better than freshly caught trout cooked over a campfire. As soon as the food hit our bellies, we were suddenly too exhausted to fight any longer. We crawled into the tent. It was big enough that we could lie side by side in our sleeping bags without feeling too crowded. Alex had claimed the right side, and Joey was asleep on the left, which left me in the middle. That was the spot that could be kind of annoying because I'd be woken up if anyone wanted to go and pee, because they'd have to climb over me. I was too tired to care much though, and was asleep within seconds. It was the middle of the night and I was completely discombobulated when Alex woke me up. You need to see this, he said. He tried to shake Joey awake as well, but his brother batted his hand away and refused to get up. I only humored him because I had to pee. I did my duty behind a tree while Alex called to me to hurry up. Curious to see what he'd try to sell me this time, I followed him. As I'd guessed, he walked me to the train engine. Tell me that you see what I see, Alex said, his voice weird, like he was shook to his core. It was dark, so the train, tree and bushes were nothing except black shadows. It took me a while to see what had freaked Alex out. And when I finally saw it, I freaked out too, because there was definitely no way that Alex could have done it. The locomotive no longer had the tree growing up through it. But it wasn't like someone cut the tree down. The tree was still there, right beside the locomotive. It was like someone had dismantled the train from around the tree, and then reassembled it beside the tree. Except that was impossible. A crane might have been able to lift the locomotive up, but the tree would have been destroyed. The branches, the upper limbs and foliage would never have survived. And the tree was in perfect condition. The trunk merely bent weird, as if it had grown around seats and levers and through wheels and windshields. Alex and I stared at it, walked around the locomotive and the tree, scratched our heads. The tree, after all, had been inside the tracks to grow up through the engine. But now the tracks were under the train, passing by the tree. After a while, we questioned our own memories. Had the tree really grown through the locomotive? I mean, we knew it had, because both of us remembered that it had. We'd all climbed inside the locomotive dozens of times, my cousins probably hundreds of times. But it was easier questioning our own sanity than admitting that something that we were seeing with our own eyes simply couldn't exist. The windshield was repaired now that the tree wasn't inside the locomotive anymore. It glittered in the moonlight. The inside of the cab was in like new condition and sparkling clean. No more dirt and decaying leaf smell or the scampering sounds of mice. Another difference seemed to be that it now was hotter inside than it had been before, probably because now there wasn't a tree shading it from the inside. Although why that would make a difference in the cool night air, I wasn't sure. The lever that I clearly recalled being broken, lying on the floor in former visits, was in one piece and back in place. Even the bell had been rehung, the housing shiny and new, a new rope stretching back into the cab for the engineer to pull. Without thinking, I reached over and rang it. The bell pealed loud and clear and there was a sudden woof whoosh noise. Alex and I stared at each other in shock, then we felt the whole train vibrate. We swayed and were forced to grab for handholds. Then there was another whoosh. We both realized the train was moving. Alex gave a yell and jumped clear of the train, myself bailing right behind him. Turning around and staring in horror, we saw a cloud of steam rise above the engine and saw the great wheels slowly turning, steam shooting up behind them. Joey! Alex screamed and ran, elbows pumping, cutting in front of the steam engine and out of my sight. I ran beside the train, steam billowing around me, also screaming Joey's name. The train started slowly but gained speed quickly. The tent was only yards away and, No matter how fast I ran, I couldn't get in front of the train to cross over to help save Joey. The engine was blocking my sight when we reached the spot where the tent had been. I heard Alex's screams lost in the whooshing of the wheels, and the rattling of the cars. Cars? There were suddenly cars attached to the steam engine. I stopped and watched dumbfounded as they trundled past me. Under them there were solid tracks, newly built tracks, where there had been no tracks at all. The train should have derailed before it reached our tent, but it chugged onward, the whistle now blowing as it turned downward toward the stream. I heard the rattle as it crossed the bridge, then the sound faded in the distance as the train continued on tracks that didn't exist. I jumped across the tracks. The tent was gone, the fire pit crushed, embers scattered about. I stamped out as many as I could as I desperately looked around for the tent, screaming for Joey and Alex. A low moan sounded and I found the two of them farther down the trail, closer to the stream, Joey still tangled in remnants of the tent. Alex had managed to reach him in time and had dragged him out of the tent, but not quick enough to keep Joey's foot from becoming entangled. The train had crushed the campsite and dragged the tent along with Joey and Alex down the trail. Fortunately, the fabric ripped apart before they were dragged under the wheels. Joey had a broken ankle and both had lacerations and bruises from being dragged through the brush. We splinted his ankle and tried to find our crushed and scattered belongings. Most everything had been in the tent when the train ran it over. I found my backpack by the stream. The flap was torn off, all the contents gone, but both straps were still intact. Joey found his fishing rod in perfect condition on the bridge. Alex's and mine were never to be seen again. We slowly limped toward home, Alex and I shouldering Joey between us. He stared in wonder at the bare spot by the tree as we staggered on by. It was 7 miles back to their house, but less than a mile into the trip Alex shouted and pointed at something new. On the opposite side of the stream, in the middle of a field, was a rusted, broken locomotive. A tree grew through it, and it obviously had been there forever.